state government and development organizations across Africa. Mr. Tony believes that meaningful social progress begins with an informed and engaged citizenry. As a writer and also a speaker, he explores communications, leadership, and how ideas shape people, organizations, and society. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly welcome our facilitator for today's topic, democracy and citizen participation, Mr. Tony Osidame.
Thank you, Samsidine. Thank you very much for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. My sincere apologies for the dates on the presentation. I actually made some changes because I've been given this class for a few years now. So this should have reflected a current date. So I apologize for that, but I'm happy to be here again. I see that there are about 55 people in class, so I welcome all of you. I am not an expert on democracy or governance. I'm just somebody who is very enthusiastic, about nation building and society's progress generally, as you heard in my in the intro that Samsidine made. So please don't look at me as an expert. I'm a learner like you. I want you to please take notes. If there are things that I'm saying that are unclear as we go on, please make a note in the comments, and I'll come back to them later. And then at the end, there'll be an opportunity for questions, answers, and remarks, because we're all learning. Nobody here is an expert. Before I go on, can we confirm, Samsidine and anyone in class, can we confirm that we can all hear me very well? If you can
clearly,
please
indicate.
Clearly,
I hear you clearly.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. So let's dive into it. Our topic for today, as was introduced, is democracy and citizen participation. And we are going to be exploring this in 3 sections. We're going to first and foremost look at the different forms of government. We'll explore anarchism, autocracy, oligarchy, and of course, democracy. And then we'll delve deeper into the meaning of democracy and what it's like in practice. We'll look at the variants and the challenges. And finally, we'll explore the concept of citizenship. We'll look at 2 key concepts: citizens as users and choosers or consumers, and citizens as shapers and makers. And then we'd also look at issues in modern day citizenship and how to build active citizen participation. So let's begin with the forms of government. Let's start by defining what government is. In simple terms, government is the body with the power to make and or enforce laws to control a country, a land area, a people, or an organization. Let me take that again. Government is the body with the power to make and or enforce laws to control a country, a land area, a people, or an organization. I chose to take my time just so that I can show you these different variables when it comes to government, because most of the time when we think of government, we only think in terms of geographical territories or geographical areas like countries. That's still a form of government existing in a business institution where there are laws that guide, how things are done within that particular institution. So when we talk about forms of government, different types of government next. The first we're going to look at is anarchism. And anarchism simply means rule by none. Anarchism is rule by none. It's a society without a publicly enforced government or political authority. I'm sure you're asking, how can it be possible to have a country, a society without any form of government, when I just took my time to explain that, in different social organizations, a form of government exists. This classification is mainly for academic reasons, right? But as we go on, we will see why anarchism as a form of government matters. Technically, you may say it's impossible, but when we go on and explore democracy better, you would see why we're discussing the subject of anarchism. So just bear in mind that anarchism as a type of government means rule by none. Okay, we'll explore that and the implications for other types of government as we go on. The second we want to look at is autocracy. An autocracy simply means rule by one. It's a system of government in which supreme power, whether that is social or political, is concentrated in the hands of one person or polity whose decisions are subject to neither external legal restraints nor any regularized mechanisms of popular control, meaning that the government is not determined by election and the power of the person who wields this is limitless, except, in cases of coup d'etat or mass insurrection. Coup d'etat just simply means a coup, right? So in an autocratic government, power rests in the hands of one person, and absolute monarchies, such as you have in places like Saudi Arabia, in the UAE, in Oman, in Brunei, and dictatorships, such as what you have in North Korea, are the main modern day forms of autocracy. Okay? The third type of government we're going to look at is oligarchy. An oligarchy simply means rule by the few. Let me pause for 1 second just to be sure that the class is following. Please, can you indicate that we are following? I want to be sure that I'm not talking to myself. Brilliant. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Ruth. Yes, thank you very much. So we'll go on. Oligarchy. Just like we explored anarchism and autocracy, oligarchy simply means rule by the few, rule by a few. Okay? It's a form of power structure in which power rests with a small number of people. And these people can be distinguished by different factors. we have the aristocracy, which simply means rule by nobility. Nobility is royal born or blue blood, the people that are, born into power, such as you have in the monarchies, right? We also have such in traditional institutions in Nigeria, where the progression of power or the transition of power is within people that belong to the particular ruling family. For instance, Edo State, where you have the Oba of Benin. That position of Oba of Benin is not open to anybody outside of the royal family. It has to be passed on from the Oba to one of his own descendants, whether, a son, if he has a son or a daughter or a grandson. In the case of Edo State, it's usually power is usually transferred to the males. However, another example is Britain and the monarchy, where power is passed from the king. We saw very recently from the Queen Elizabeth, now to King Charles. And after King Charles, it's going to be one of the children, Prince Harry. I've forgotten the name of the other one. It's going to be one of the children who would eventually step into power. That's what an aristocracy looks like. Outsiders do not get to contest or be eligible for succession in those situations. Okay, so as a form of oligarchic government, aristocracy is ruled by the nobility. There's also plutocracy, which is ruled by the wealthy. Again, technically, there's no social arrangement technically where only the rich rule. However, as we would see when we explore other forms of government, in practice, there can be a mix of this. And today, as we'll see, in practice, you can find that it is the richest people who are determining policies, who are determining the quality, ultimately the quality of lives of the people in a society. So as a variant of oligarchy, plutocracy means rule by the wealthy. And then there's also meritocracy, which is ruled by the meritorious. Those are people who are distinguished in certain areas. So for instance, in a country, you could decide that, when it comes to the construction, infrastructure, you would have a notable engineer as the person who is leading the country in that area. When it comes to, say, healing and medicine, and things to do with wellness, you would have a respected doctor as somebody who is leading in that regard. So that's what meritocracy means. The last form under oligarchy, last variant or distinguishing factor of oligarchy is theocracy. And theocracy technically means rule by God, but we all know that God will not come down and rule by himself. So power is exercised by a religious elite. The country of Iran has many aspects of a theocratic state. Okay? Now let's move on to democracy. Democracy, following the trend that we set. Remember, we said anarchism is ruled by none. Autocracy is ruled by one. Oligarchy is ruled by a few. While democracy simply means rule by the majority. The most popular definition of the word was popularized by Abraham Lincoln of the United States. And that is the definition of democracy as a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It's not like Abraham Lincoln coined that expression. The expression existed, but he popularized that expression. So most people today, when they talk about democracy or when they try to define democracy, this is how it is defined: as a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Now let's delve deeper into democracy. We'll look at the origin of democracy and what it's like in practice. If I asked this class today, if I asked all of you present in this class to tell me what you think democracy is, the responses we are likely to get are that it is a government of the people, it is the will of the majority, it is competition for political power, it is the right to voice one's opinions, it's freedom to be part of any organization, it has to do with equality, rights, and representation, it has to do with free markets, citizen action, and elections. But how did democracy as a concept really start? The term democracy is derived from the Greek word demokratia, and demokratia was coined from two words. The first is demos, meaning people, and kratos, meaning rule or power to rule. And this was coined around the middle of the 5th century. So that's where, rule by the majority came from, because it's a Greek word, right? While the word itself and the practice was thought to have been formalized around the middle of the 5th century, there is ample evidence that suggests that, in a broad sense, democratic societies or democratic governments already existed many years before. In fact, scholars believe that democracy was the natural form of governance amongst the non-literate tribal societies. Those are those many years when people used to survive by hunting and gathering. Democracy, scholars believe, had already existed in different forms during that time, even before the Greeks coined the word around the middle of the 5th century. But as greater inequalities, started to appear within communities, some communities started getting wealthier, and as they got wealthier, they started building developing engineering and military might, right? As they started to do this, they started to feel that if we are wealthier than most of the other communities around us, geographic territories around us, if we have more resources, whether it is engineering, medical, and if we are bigger in size, what stops us from going to neighboring communities and just taking them over and lording ourselves over them? Okay, does it seem like something you've seen in modern day times, where a country would just decide, because I'm bigger than the other one, I'll just go in there? We've heard some political leaders today talk about going into other countries because they have the military mights, right? Yeah, I'm sure some of you have heard of the saying, might is right, right? And so that was what was happening at some point. Communities started feeling we are big enough, we can go and ransack this territory and take the people as our slaves and lord over them. So because of these inequalities in wealth and military power, and sizes of communities started to grow beyond, the small sizes that we had. Hierarchical and authoritarian forms of government started to take root. And so the form of democracy that we had in those primitive societies vanished. And for thousands of years, it was replaced by governments based on monarchy, aristocracy, and oligarchy. That's why I took time to go through these different forms before. And so in some places we had authoritarian governments, and in some places it was the oligarchy government. So somebody, a strong man, comes and says, I will hoist my flag in this community, and everybody in this community now answers to me. So that became the norm for many years. And then around 500 BC, conditions that permitted democracy in the form that we knew it, where it was the people organizing themselves and choosing for themselves who their leaders were and how they wanted to live and be governed, was reinvented in newer ways. And two countries were at the forefront of this reinvention, talking about Greece and Rome. So democracy as we know it today, as a popular form of government, was championed by Greece and Rome. Okay? Now let's go on. Let's explore the variants of democracy, because there are actually different forms of democracy, but broadly speaking, we're going to be exploring two types. The first is the direct or participatory democracy, which is a form of government where citizens themselves make legislative decisions instead of delegating that power to representatives. They themselves are involved in deciding on legislation and policies that affect them. It is considered the purest form of democracy. Examples are referendums and petitions, where voters directly participate. And in recent history, examples that we can cite would be the Scottish referendum of September 18, 2014, where the people of Scotland voted to decide whether they should become an independent country, meaning that whether they should step out of the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom has several countries under it, including England. There's England, there's Wales, there's Ireland. Scotland is also part of the United Kingdom. So the Scottish referendum was the people deciding whether they should remain a part of the United Kingdom or whether they should become an independent, country, as it were, like, outside of the United Kingdom. So that the referendum happened in 2014, and 55.3% of Scottish people said, no, we do not want to leave the United Kingdom. We want to remain a part of the United Kingdom. And only 44.7% said yes. That's why Scotland today is still part of the United Kingdom. This voting process, like I said, had the people themselves involved, and it took months. And it was accepted. The results of this referendum were accepted by everybody because it was open and transparent. Yes, there were people who would have preferred, of course, in any any form of election, people prefer other alternatives, but the majority voted to stay a part of the UK. After the Scottish referendum, another example that I can cite is the Brexit. I'm sure some of us remember Brexit, when the people of the United Kingdom, Britain, voted whether to remain a part of the EU or to exit the EU. That's why the word Brexit, Britain exiting the European Union. And that happened in 2016. 51.9% said, let us leave the EU, while only 48.1% said to stay. That's why today, even though Britain is in Europe, it's not a part of the Schengen country. So when you hear of Schengen visas basically allow you travel to most of the European countries. However, with your Schengen visa, you cannot travel to the UK or Ireland because they have moved out of the EU. So those are two examples of direct or participatory democracy where through referendums and petitions, the people themselves decide how they want to be governed or the policies that will affect them. Okay, the second broad classification of democracy is called the representative or indirect democracy. This is a form of government in which legislation is enacted by representatives chosen by the people themselves, as against, direct democracy where the people exercise power by themselves. In the representative form, they delegate power to representatives to act in their interests. The minority is mandated to do this because the majority said, yes, we believe you have whether it's the education, whether it's the leadership qualities, whether it is the good intentions to represent us, right? So those are the, broadly speaking, two variants of democracy that we have. Okay? Now let's talk about the comparative advantage of democracy. We have looked at other forms of government. We looked at anarchism. We looked at autocracy. We looked at oligarchy. And we're looking at democracy now. I'm talking about other forms of government. First and foremost, no association could maintain a democratic government for as long as democracy has been in place if majority of the people believe that other forms of government are better. The fact that out of 195 countries, if you count the Vatican and the Holy See that we have in the world today, the fact that about 167 practice some form of democracy. I say some form because democracy has different expressions. Some people practice the full democracy. Only about 75 countries practice full or what is called electoral democracy. The remaining practice a form of democracy, but it's the hybrid kind of democracy. For instance, look at a place like Rwanda. Rwanda practices democracy, but that democracy is democracy sprinkled with a little bit of autocracy. And I think in some ways, our beloved country, especially given that there is no clear distinction today in this particular government between the different arms. I'm talking about the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative. It almost seems like a continuum, like, one, instead of having defined lines, right? Those kind of settings, even though they are said to be democratic governments in theory, in practice, they are democracy mixed with a bit of other forms of government. Remember before I talked about anarchism, that how can anarchism exist, right? Ask yourself, for those who are old enough to remember, what you thought was happening at a time in this country where we did not even know that the president was dead until a minister in that government, the late Dora Akinyuli, came out and said, this man has died. Oh. For a while, a cabal had the country under lockdown, meaning that the elected president was nowhere. Isn't that a form of anarchy? In fact, look beyond that. There was a time in this country where we had a president who was outside this country in a hospital for nearly, is it 90 days? And there were speculations as to whether he was alive or not, you know, for certain periods until power was transmitted to the vice president. Before people started making noise, there was a period that seemed to be chaotic. It seemed like there was no government at all because nobody knew whether that particular president was alive or not. I mean, it's supposed to be a democracy, but inside that democracy, you can see anarchy, which is what anarchism means. Like, you know, almost like a ship without a captain, you know, or a rudderless ship, you know, just moving without anybody steering it, right? Anyways, I derailed. Back to the point I was trying to make. The fact that of the 195 countries, 167 practice one form of democracy, whether it is a full democracy or a flawed or hybrid version, the fact that 167 are practicing democracy means the people, majority of the people, do not believe that another form of government is better. Do you believe another form of government is better? I think that's an open debate. I personally think democracy is good, but I don't think that democracy, as the West practices it, should be adopted by every country, hook, line, and sinker. I believe, and this is my personal opinion, that every country, looking at the peculiar circumstances, should be able to decide what form of government best works for them. Again, this is not a general opinion. It's my personal opinion, and everyone is allowed to have an opinion about this. But the facts don't change. 167 out of 195 countries today practice democracy. That means they believe, most people in the world believe that democracy is still a better form of government. The facts don't lie. And why do they say this? Why is democracy compared to the other forms of government better? Because in theory, it prevents rule by autocrats. I'm sure some of you will shake your head and say, no. You know of examples of countries that are supposedly democratic, but the leadership are carrying on as if it is a one-man rule. I'm sure some of you have countries like that on your radar. But generally speaking, democracy is thought to prevent rule by autocrats. It's thought to guarantee the fundamental individual rights of citizens more than any other form of government. Imagine under a full authoritarian government, for instance, the likes of Iran, where the government decides what social media you get on, whether you even have internet at all, decides how you dress, right? That doesn't guarantee fundamental individual rights of citizens. It may have its benefits, don't get me wrong, but the reason people believe democracy is better than any other form of government, one of the reasons is more people and their rights, the rights of more of the citizens is guaranteed than in any other form of government. Democracy, speaking about the comparative advantage to other forms of government, is thought to allow for a relatively high level of political equality. It is thought to better foster human development. When you look at indices of development like health, education, and I'm talking access now, access to health, access to education, justice, security. In a democratic situation or setting, more people are likely to have access to this services, social services, than if it was any other kind of government like autocracy or oligarchy, where power is concentrated in the hands of a few and they can decide what to do with those resources and who gets it. That way, the wealth, the likelihood of the wealth spreading to more of the masses is limited than in a democracy. Again, this is if the democracy is practiced as it should be. I already made a caveat before that this is technically speaking, right? The practice may be different. Finally, democracy is thought to provide more prosperity for citizens, because in ideal democracy, where the people are the ones deciding their own policies, the wealth, of course, is supposed to be spread. Benefits, social welfare benefits are supposed to be spread to the majority of citizens. So comparatively, democracy is thought to offer more advantages than other forms of government that we identified. But democracy, as I have hinted at, is not without its challenges, right? I already said, if you look at the way democracy is happening in most countries today, remember I said that of the 167 countries that practice democracy, only 75, about 70, 75, practice what is called full democracy. The others is one hybrid form or the other. So they can't say that they are practicing democracy. A country can say that it's practicing democracy, but in actual fact or in practice, you see other forms of government present. You see in some periods complete anarchy, where it seems like there is no government in place, even though it's supposed to be a democracy. You see signs of autocracy, authoritarian governments, where it's a democracy in quotes, but the presidents or the rulers of these countries are the ones determining everything. The legislature or the judiciary are like rubber stamps. I'm not mentioning any country. You can figure out for yourself. And this is not just Africa. This is happening everywhere around the world, right? In some cases too, and again, everywhere around the world, it is supposed to be a democracy, right? Where equality, universality, individual right, prosperity is supposed to be ensured for as many people as possible. However, you see in many countries today where democracy is being practiced that it is a few powerful individuals that are actually pulling the strings behind the scenes. So you see a democratically elected president, but who is actually shaping all the policies? Who is actually making all the decisions? It might be a small block of powerful, influential, wealthy people who are actually deciding. So even though we say democracy has all these advantages, we see that in the way it's practiced in reality, there are so many, challenges, right? Okay. Let's, before I move on, let me check again that we are all following. Can we indicate that we're following? Thank you for the comments. Somebody said like USA. It's not me that said it too. Yes. Are we following? Thank you. Thank you for the thumbs up. I'm happy to see that we have an engaged class. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Isaac, Anna, Osemudiame, my Edo brother. Thank you, Omorigbe. Thank you, Bernard, thank you, Aurelua. Thank you, Christabel, Adeoti, Ruth, Peter. Thank you. Thank you to everyone. So let's go on. Let's look at citizenship now. Citizenship is very tied to the idea of democracy. Democracy is the first name and citizenship is the last name, meaning that you cannot talk about democracy without talking about citizenship. And please remember this as we go on. What makes democracy compared to others unique is that a true democracy reflects the will of the majority of the people. Emphasis on a true democracy, right? It reflects the will of the majority of the people and it works for the majority of the people. So there are two, just as you have citizenship, you have democracy. Remember these two words, equality, universality. Those are inextricably tied to the very idea of democracy and citizenship. Let's explore citizenship more. We're going to look at two different concepts of citizenship. The first is citizens as users or consumers or choosers. So the concept of citizenship gains traction a lot around the 18th century. At that time, debates around civil citizenships were shaped by an understanding of the rights and responsibilities of citizens as defined by government. What this simply means is that when the concept of citizenship eventually, when it started, the idea was that it is the government that tells the people what their rights and obligations are. And so the initial understanding of citizenship, in the initial understanding, a model citizen was one who displayed trust and obedience. The belief was that ordinary people didn't have the capacity, the knowledge, or the right judgment to be able to solve their problems or decide what was good for them. So the government was the one that told them, this is what your rights are, this is what your responsibilities are, and this is what you get, right? That was the idea, the initial idea of citizenship. So citizens were not active participants in decision making. They were more like followers. Do like this and you do. Follow this way and they follow. However, a new concept of citizenship started to emerge later. The advocates of this new concept of citizens as shapers and makers, they argued that it is not that people are not competent enough or are distracted by minor things like, like basic things like actually making a living, that they cannot decide on broader issues that will affect them. The problem was that few people held on to power. And so these new advocates of a new way of looking at citizenship said, the more people are involved in decisions that affect them, the better government would have performed and the better the lot of the citizens, their quality of life would improve. And the Institute of Development Studies UK captured this well when it says, new approaches to social citizenship seek to move beyond seeing the state as bestowing rights and demanding responsibilities of its subjects. In doing so, They aim to bridge the gap between citizen and the state by recasting citizenship as practiced, meaning instead of being sit down look, you know that language, right? Instead of being passengers or just zombies who are told what to do, it is something you practice, meaning you are an active participant. It is not a right that is given to you by the state, but you are actively involved. These new concepts of citizenship as makers and shapers, rather than users and choosers, recognizes the agency of citizens, meaning that these people are not olodos. They are not people who are incapable of making decisions. They actually have the capability if they are given a chance. And so the concept moves from citizens as users and consumers, which in another way of putting it, as passive people that just follow, to citizens as active participants, shapers, and makers. Okay? Now, let's go on to issues in modern day citizenship. Remember what I said earlier. Modern conceptions of citizenships are grounded in the notions of equality and universality. Remember that citizenship and democracy, you remember, two sides of a coin. They must guarantee, or the idea behind true democracy and true citizenship is that it guarantees for most. Remember that democracy is ruled by the majority, right? So when you think of citizenship, think most. When you think of democracy, think most, majority. The idea is that citizenship, democracy must guarantee equality and universality. That means most of the people must feel equal. Most of the people must feel seen and cared for under a democratic setting. However, in practice, there's a big gap, big tension, there's actually a big tension between theory and practice, and we're going to explore some of these issues now. The first is individual versus collective identity. In this class, just as in every social setting, right, there are different multiple personalities, multiple identities. In fact, let's look at this class. In this class, I see Christabel Olopade. I'm hoping I didn't murder your surname. Forgive me if I did. I'm guessing Christabel is a female Yoruba from that name. That name sounds Yoruba. I may be wrong. I see Janet Akingbade. That's also a female Yoruba. Also in this class, I see Atabat Awasak Bernard. This person is not Yoruba. This person is from another tribe. I'm guessing maybe Middle Belt or around Adamawa. I may be wrong, right? Then there is Omorogbe, who is from, I know that for sure because I'm from Edo. Yes, I'm trying to see the different people. Yeah, I see people from Taraba, Sunday from Taraba. I see Abubakar Sadiq, who is of the APC. I see Andrew, who is of ZLP, right? The point I'm trying to make is that even in this, our class, we have different identities. We have somebody who is a Yoruba man, but a Christian. We have another who is a Yoruba, but a Muslim. We probably have somebody who is a Yoruba, but doesn't practice any religion, is an atheist. In this same class, we have a Yoruba that is a Christian, that is APC. We have a Yoruba that is Muslim, that is PDP. We have an Igbo person. Oh, thank you. Correction, Atabat is from Plateau. Thank you for that. We have an Igbo person that is APC. We have another one that might be ADC, right? We have somebody from the north too, whether Hausa, whether Fulani. We have people from the Middle Belt. We have people from other states. You know, the point I'm trying to make is that the society, just as this class, is made up of people with multiple identities. If we say that democracy or citizenship is supposed to guarantee the betterment of most of the people within a state or a geographical area or a society, in practice, how do you account or how do you ensure that in protecting the rights of one, you are not usurping the rights of another? How do we ensure this? I'll give you an example. And I'm using this example because it shows ideological wise, it shows these points of individual versus collective identity more. Some time ago, in the United States, there was a couple, a gay couple, that wanted to have their wedding cake made. They approached a cake company. I think the cake company was called Masterpiece Cake Shop. And they said to the cake shop, please make a cake for our wedding. This is how we want it. We are gay people. The owner of that shop said, I am a Christian. And because of my faith, I am not inclined to making a wedding cake for a gay couple. And so I decline. Now, there are different arguments here. One argument is, but I have a right to service as a citizen of this country. This country, the states, was Colorado in the US, has anti-discrimination laws, meaning that you can't discriminate against a person in the provision of public services based on their ethnicity, religion, race, sexual orientation. So these people, the gay couple and the people that support them, were arguing. But what stops you from providing the service? They are not saying you should change who you are, but this person is saying, I have a right. And the Constitution also guarantees your own right to your religion. I have a right to decide who I provide my services to in a way that is consistent with my faith. So that's the problem. Remember, we talked about equality. We talked about rights of everybody. One of the biggest issues in a democracy is, how do we guarantee that in respecting the right of one person, like the right of the couple to service, we are not usurping the rights of another person to their own religion? Do you understand? This matter actually went to court. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. And even though the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the cake shop, their ruling did not say that tomorrow people should be denied services based on their ethnicity or sexual orientation or skin color or whatever, because those same anti-discrimination laws were never repealed. They're still there today. The only reason they ruled in favor of the cake shop was that the court said that they did not look at the specific situation of the baker in bringing up this case. So even though the baker won this time, it is not an antecedent for other people to deny people who are different services, meaning that even after that Supreme Court victory, there's still ambiguity in how to ensure that everyone's rights is protected. Same thing. If you come down to our country, for instance, has anti-gay laws, right? Our country has anti-gay laws. Even though there are prescriptions in the law for how people who engage in certain acts should be handled, whether or not you agree with it is besides the point, right? I am not saying I am for or against these laws. This is just for academic discussions. The country has laws, but then people decide they want to do what they want to do, and then you see people going to lynch them and burn them. Again, where is the right of that person to fair hearing under the law? Why are the mob taking laws into their hands and deciding to end the life of another person for something that has not harmed them in any way? Look at South Africa, for instance. Look at South Africa and what happened recently. Yes, they were kicking against people who were there illegally, undocumented migrants. But there were also people who were there legally, and they were claiming that those people do not have the right to establish businesses. And even though, according to the democratic laws, those people are supposed to be protected, we saw how South Africans went inside, beating them up, and in some cases, killing people in a democratic setting. So that tension is there. How do we ensure that in practicing democracy, because democracy is supposed to be about everybody and their rights and dignity, it's supposed to be about equality. In practice, how do we ensure that in upholding the rights of one person, the right to whatever, the right to life, the right to religion, the right to anything, how do we ensure that in upholding their rights, we are not infringing on the rights of another person? Okay, so this is one of the challenges of modern day democracy in practice. Let's go on to the second one, which is private life versus public life. Again, remember, democracy is supposed to be about equal rights, right? For everybody or for most of the people. Always remember most, majority of the people. The distinguishing factor, theoretically, why most countries practice democracy today like we established is because more than the other forms, it's supposed to ensure the rights of most of the people, and it's supposed to better guarantee access to social welfare, education, health, justice, security for most people, Abi. Now, one of the tensions in modern day citizenship is the discrepancy between private life and public life. Let me start with an example, a real life example. A friend of mine back in medical school was Igbo and Christian. She was dating a guy who was Yoruba and Muslim. Two brilliant people. They're still married today after many years, and they're very happy. However, the father of the bride, despite being a well-respected person in public, a professor, well-respected, brilliant professor and everything. He said academically brilliant and everything. He said over his dead body, would his daughter marry a Yoruba Muslim? Democracy is supposed to be about equal rights and respecting everybody, right? Why is this respected man who does well, everywhere and is respected in his academic, why is it that in private, he has this kind of mindset? Again, my argument is not right or wrong here, right? I'm just bringing up these examples to let us think about the differences, the gaps, and sometimes hypocrisy. That's what I want us to think about, right? Another example, true life example. Two people were ushers in a church, a man, an Igbo man, and a Yoruba woman. They got along so well. Their children got along so well. They even used to visit, one another once in a while. However, at some point, these same people who were very, very okay, and they were aligned on many issues in church, good, as family friends, good. The point where their children decided to get involved in terms of like relationship and community, it became a big issue, a really big issue that divided them. The man said over his dead body, the woman too said, "Lai lai, omo Igbo, lai lai, oh le fe omo Igbo." Right? Outwardly, there's the sense of unity in public, in church. But in private, there's that division. If democracy is supposed to be about, and citizenship is supposed to be about ensuring the rights of everybody, why do we have this tension between private life and public life? Another example, how many times do we see, even amongst us, maybe some of us in this class, when we are in a position to give people opportunities, how many times do we say, if it is not my tribe's person, if it's not a Yoruba person, I will not give that person the job. I would rather give it to a fellow Yoruba person, or a fellow Igbo person, or a fellow Hausa person, or a fellow Jos person, or a fellow Nasarawa person. How many times do we see that? We see people that are qualified for positions, and we say, no, I will not give this job to a woman. I will not give this job to a man, even though that man is qualified, even though that woman is qualified. How many times do we see that happen? How many times do we see a man, a pastor, an imam, a traditional ruler, in public, they are very, very kind and generous, always helping. However, in private, they are beating their wives. They are maltreating their children. How many times do we see that? Another example, a senator from Adamawa, one time, he will be presented in the public as a champion of the people, always advocating for the rights of women, always advocating for equality. And then this same senator was caught on camera in a sex shop, physically assaulting women for whatever reason. I'm sure some of you remember that story. Or even more recently, the one in a state, in one of the eastern states, who said he would kill or have an Uber driver killed just like that because the Uber driver failed to come out of the car to hand him the delivery. Do we remember that story? Now, the public profile of the person might say champion of the people, philanthropist, kind-hearted man. But that is the same person who in private wants to end somebody's life just like that because he's in a position of power. So I'm pointing this out for us to see the discrepancies, the tension. Because if we are talking about universality, if we are talking about equality, it should not just be in private or in public. It should be consistent everywhere. How many times, as guys, we say, oh, we are respectful of women and all of that. And tomorrow, on the streets, you see a random lady walking through Yaba or Oshodi, and you are there dragging them anyhow and touching their bodies anyhow without permission. How many times do we see these contradictions, right? So these are serious issues in modern day citizenship that we need to look at, because if citizenship and democracy is what it really, really is, then there should be fairness, there should be equity, there should be equality. And the rights of the majority of the people should be guaranteed under this sort of settings. Okay, let's go on. Oh, before I go on, let me just be sure, check again. Are we still following me? Or please indicate, are we following?
Going forward, do you think that? Yes, clearly, sir. Yes. Religiously, we are following you.
Okay. Great. So let's look at the next issue in modern day citizenship, and that's societal context. So what citizenship is differs depending on the context. There are just two examples here. And this is an irony because of what is happening now. This is a big irony because at a point in South Africa, a good citizen was somebody that is actively fighting racism. This was how South Africans looked at citizenship more than any other attribute or quality of citizenship. This was what mattered most to them. But let us look at what is happening now and look at the unfortunate contrasts in mindset, right? And for countries that have been at war, look at Syria, in Africa, DR Congo, you know, look at Afghanistan and all those places. Their idea of citizenship is a person who is always seeking peaceful resolutions and reconciliation. So different societies and in different contexts, what they value as good citizenship slightly varies. But the common thread, as much as possible, is that equality and universality. And by equality and universality, again, I am stressing it. It means that under a true democracy, and for somebody who considers themselves a good citizen, they should be an advocate for the majority. They should find a way to cater to all the differences in a way that protecting one group does not undermine another group. It's a very big task, and it's a conversation that will continue. And while I said earlier that 75 countries practice, in quotes, full democracy, there are still areas for refinement and improvement. And I think as citizens continue to have this discussion and examine all of these issues, we'll develop better ways to ensure that the rights and the rights of most people and benefits are spread to as many people within the society as possible. Okay? So what makes a good citizen? We had started talking about this earlier. It is very, very good that I hear Big Brother has started. I used to watch Big Brother, I will not lie. At some point, with my wife, I used to watch Telemundo. I even watched Z World. I will not lie. And there's nothing about watching it today. If you are watching it, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. By all means, stay in touch, in tune with all the latest entertainment, the latest gossip. But in addition to that, a good citizen should be informed and aware of social, economic, and political issues. So it's not just entertainment and gossip that we should be interested in. We should be interested in all of these other issues that affect us. That's a good citizen. A good citizen should foster tolerance and respect for human rights in all relationships and institutions. Mob violence is not something a good citizen should do. For whatever reason, the best you can do is inform the authorities, inform law enforcement. But if you call yourself a good citizen, then mob violence is not something you should do. You should be looking to respecting people and their rights and their choices. A good citizen should be concerned about taking steps to combat disadvantage and injustice. There are times when I read stuff on social media. Sometimes it's even our influencers doing this. You see a comedian, and that comedian, in a bid to be funny, is making jokes about somebody who has one form of, I don't know what the technical word today is. I don't want to disrespect or offend anyone's sensibilities. Please forgive me. I'm talking about somebody with some challenge, whether it's a physical challenge. Please, if you know what the technical word is today, please put it in the comments, right? Because we have to be careful about these things. That's part of what good citizens should do. Be up to date with, language in social settings. So a comedian, in a bid to make people laugh, is cracking jokes about somebody on a wheelchair or somebody who has polio. And people are there laughing and whatever. Do we put ourselves in the situation of those people that they are making fun of? I'm not saying we should be too steep, because sometimes I've seen people with certain disabilities actually be comedians and make fun of themselves, right? But sometimes we need to put ourselves in the position of other people. If citizenship is about ensuring everyone, especially the most vulnerable amongst us, are protected, let us consider how our actions will affect those people. It's very, very, very important. Sometimes I see celebrities, and one example I give, I don't see his post very much. I hope that he has changed. Is a certain influencer called Tunde Ednot. At one time, he would post pictures of girls, of ladies, and then he would say smash or pass, meaning, would you sleep with them or would you pass? The next thing you will see, people will come talking about the lady's body, and you see insults. Apart from the insults, the fact that somebody with that amount of influence is using his platform to objectify and entertain comments that degrade or insult a particular gender, for me, it's quite sad, because with that kind of power and influence, there's a lot of good that we can do, because those are platforms for us to speak against certain ills. Remember, democracy, citizenship is about equality, universality, about protecting the most vulnerable amongst us. There should be better use of these platforms than to objectify and to shame or body shame. And then you see men and other women shamelessly in the comments insulting people's looks, insulting all of that, forgetting that they have sisters, they have mothers, they have wives, they have girlfriends. How would you feel if other people are talking like that about your wife, your daughter, your sister? You know, these are things that we need to start considering. It's not enough to say we are good people by word. Sometimes we don't even know when we do this. We don't even know when we do this. And I'll get to personal responsibility shortly. Good citizens should promote collective action and collective spirit. They should participate in community and national affairs. On this point, if I ask you, all of us here, we probably comment on, some of us comment on social issues, political issues in this era of social media. But let me ask, how many of you here, tell me honestly, how many of you here know the names of your local government chairman? I mean, it's okay that we complain. It's okay that we're even following news about what's happening in the first place. And it's okay that we are complaining about the things that are not right. It is my hope that when we make these complaints, we are fact-checking, because a good citizen should not just spread things without checking. Some of us spread outright lies. I may not like a particular government, but it doesn't give me the license to spread lies or things that are capable of causing disaffection and hate. It doesn't give me the right. I can wait for the next ballot and go and cast my vote against that person that I don't like. But nothing gives me the right to spread misinformation and lies. But we find ourselves doing that, right? The point I was making before, how many of us know our local government chairmen? How many? Do we know that some of these complaints, we can actually go and channel them to our representatives at the local level? How many of us do? I challenge us, for those of us who don't, to try to find out, because that's one of the ways to be active citizens. I'm not saying the responsibility falls on us alone. Even those people or anybody in public life, they actually should make themselves accessible, put their contacts for complaints, opinions, recommendations, make it easy for people to reach them. So there is a responsibility on the part of the elected public officials, but we as citizens, we also have a responsibility to use those platforms where they are. Okay? So yes, engage in public debates, engage in political life. When it's time to vote, it's good that we are voicing our opinions on social media. But the way to actually make a real change doesn't stop at voicing your opinion on social media. Voicing is a very strong tool. Your comments, especially if they are based on facts, they are very good. They are very strong. But beyond that, get your PVCs and vote for the candidate that you choose. And respect the rights of others to choose their candidates. Respect the rights of others to choose their candidates. That's the beauty of democracy. The fact that I like APC does not mean that I am a bad person. The fact that I like Obi does not mean I am a good person. The fact that I like Atiku does not mean I'm a bad person. Do you understand? As much as we have our preferences, we also need to respect other people's decisions. Let's make our appeal to them. For whatever reason, we want them to choose a candidate or a party. But let's respect their decision to go with another one that is not our own. I see a lot of cursing. Oh, anybody who supports this, it will never be good for you. First and foremost, all of those curses are pointless. It doesn't work. You're wasting your time. Secondly, people are entitled to their choices, just as you're entitled to yours. Instead of insulting, try to convince the best that you can, and especially get your PVCs and your right to vote and exercise that right. This last point is very important to me. A good citizen should be passionate and hopeful about change. I will not lie to you. This country makes it hard, very, very hard to be hopeful. Because we live in a country where citizens have to do so many things that the government should be doing for themselves. So it is very hard to be hopeful in this country. But my task or challenge to you is, even if it's a shred of hope, please hold on to it. Because there's no change, no real change, no meaningful change can happen if we don't believe that it is possible. If we do not believe that it is possible, we will not even have the energy to even do the things that we should do. So yes, I understand this country can frustrate you. I have been frustrated in this country too. But we don't have another country. It is in our best interest that this country works. Until you get a chance to japa, if it is good for you and you believe the life in that country is better, this is your country. And it is in our best interest that it works. And even if you japa, you still have families here. Abi, are you going to japa with all your brothers and sisters and your cousins and your aunties and your uncles? You still have family here. So even if you japa, you can't say you don't care about this country, because you still have people here. You still have roots here. So I beg you, as frustrating as things can be, let us not lose hope. Because when we lose hope, the willpower to bring about change, every energy to bring about that change goes. So even if it is a tiny shred of hope, let us hold on to it. Finally, building active citizen advocacy. I already said, build public interest. And this is not limited to political public office holders and social media influencers alone. All of us were influencers, all of us. Within our own small spheres of influence, whether it is your school, with your classmates, whether it is in your family, with your brothers and sisters, your friends, when you meet in the beer parlor or in the salon, or when you are watching a football match, or your place of work, or the place where you worship, wherever it is that we are with people, any social setting, we have an opportunity to educate, to correct, to inform. And it's important that we do that. I was talking before about actions that people take, especially celebrities, but we also are guilty of those actions. For instance, somebody shares somebody's nudes with you. Why are you over there sharing it all over the place? Why are people, some of us, always on one comment, I beg, send me that video. Send me that video. Hey, that video, somebody's sex video. I beg, we are there begging from one post to another. I beg. Let me ask you, if it is your sister, your mother, your daughter, whose video is out there, will you be as eager to be begging for it or be sharing it? Ask yourself that. Will you be as eager? Or people are sharing jokes that are insulting women, and you are there and you are laughing. That's an opportunity for you to tell the friend. I belong to some WhatsApp groups. Sometimes it's school WhatsApp group. Sometimes, different WhatsApp group. If people share stuff that I feel ridicule a certain gender or a certain group of people, whether it is ridiculing Christians or ridiculing Muslims or people with disabilities, immediately I call out the person. I will not put laughter emoji and say, it's funny. Those are the small areas within our own sphere of influence. All of us can go into public service. But let me encourage as many people as want to please go, because we need good people in positions of authority. Complaining is good, right? Complaining is good. But if we feel that we have the calling, by all means, let us go and take up political office and try to effect changes. But again, not all of us can do that. Not all of us have that calling. However, we can make a change where we are. Some of the things I've said have been about men. Women too do many, many evil things. In fact, women do evil things to other women. This begging of nudes that I was using as an example, there are women there begging for videos. Beg, what do you want to do with another person's sex video, for crying out loud? If it is your sister as a woman, will you be sharing it like that for people to see? So sometimes we think that change is only for influencers, for political leaders, but within our own sphere of influence, amongst our friends, we should not be afraid to call them out when they are wrong. If you see people, recently there was an expose, men going to a website about how to rape women. Men, like people's fathers, brothers, sisters. Some of us hear about it and we laugh about it. But that's a terrible thing. If we know people like that, they don't even need us to go as far. Even in discussions, let us stop them and say, no, that is not good. Respect women, respect men, or women who are toxic towards men. I'm not saying fight, but let us call people out when they are stepping in the wrong direction. It's not everything that I will be laughing at and shining because it's my friend saying it. As you are having that pepper soup and unkobi, and your friend is cracking a terrible joke that degrades different people, tell your friend it's wrong. Don't laugh at everything. When they share stuff with you that is not, doesn't protect another set of people, that degrades them, demeans them, delete it. Don't acknowledge it so that they stop sharing it with you. Or better still, call them out. Those are things that we can do within our own sphere of influence. To build an active citizen advocacy, it's important to promote civic education and advocacy training. What we're doing here is very, very important, and I want to commend the Electoral College Nigeria, because civic education and building an active citizenry is very important for social progress. And this education should not stop at just primary school level. I remember when we were in primary school, we had that. And then at some point, it was eliminated from the curriculum. I think through the work of advocacy organizations, it's been reintroduced. But it should not stop at primary, secondary level. In the universities, even in the workplaces, it's important to have continuous civic education so that we are continually aware of our rights and responsibilities as citizens. And finally, and this is for Electoral College or any other person who belongs to any NGO out here that is doing good work in any area, it's important to build alliances around common grievances. One voice is great, but several voices together speaking about the same thing, we're more likely to get the outcomes that we desire in terms of actions from our political representatives, whether at the local, state, or federal level. And we're more likely to get policies that are more people-friendly. So yes, continue to do what you're doing, but find other people with a similar interest and join forces, and together the impacts can be greater. In conclusion, my dear friends, advocacy that is geared to building citizenship and reshaping political culture draws heavily on the theory and practice of participation and popular education, which is what I just said. A new practice of citizen leadership requires an integrated strategy involving participatory education processes to build people's ability to analyze their reality and internalize their rights as citizens. It also takes new alliances and broad-based democratic organizations that tap the power of working together, as well as respecting and using people's difference. Thank you very much for your time. I shall now hand you back to our moderator. I believe, I think Mobolaji is our moderator now. Yes, thank you.
Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for the wonderful lecture. Please, let's give a round of applause to our facilitator. Okay, so the floor is now going to be open for questions. So if you have any questions, please indicate. So I'll be unmuting anyone that has questions now. Mr. Tunde, so you have your mic is on.
Mr. Tunde, please go ahead. You're not audible enough. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. So quick question. Thank you for this. My question is, what sort of government does Haiti practice? The fact that they have gangs, I'm thinking maybe is it anarchy or is it constitutional? And then also, are there any real oligarchy? I mean, I won't say de facto oligarch
Yes.
countries in the world today. I'm not talking about de facto, but those that I know countries like Russia might be de facto oligarchies, but they have not been considered what do you call it? Real states of oligarchy. And then also in relation to what would you say about one-party states? For example, China is not necessarily called a one-party state, but it's called kind of like it's ruled by the elite. So I'm just trying to say there's a mishmash.
Communists. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So there's more or less like a mishmash of the systems of government. And then also we're talking about Edo State. So what happens I really don't know, but I don't know if all the Obas have been related. Because I know at times in certain states when one Oba dies, then another ruling family takes over. So I don't know what sort of government system that is, and I don't know if that's the case in Edo. I think since 1200, I don't know if all the Obas have been related. So sorry, there's a mismatch of questions there, but just to more or less
Yes.
clarify.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Tunde, for those questions. Let me start by saying I am not an expert, though. I am just somebody who is interested in how country, society works. So I do not know for certain. And if anybody knows about Haiti, they can help us out in terms of the kind of government that they run. But let me make a distinction. Most of the different types of government that I went through were mainly for academic reasons, just so that we can have a broader understanding of the forms of government. In practice, you will not have, like I said during my presentation, a country, a state that says I practice anarchy. Like you won't see that, but in practice, that's why I said most of the democracies I will say are not pure democracies. You will see a democracy and there will be periods of anarchy. Like, I don't want to name countries. There are countries today that seem to be ruled by dictators and they are supposed to be the greatest democracy in the world. But the rulership is almost like a dictatorship. Thankfully, they have better checks and balance. Otherwise, it will be worse off than some of the countries in the Middle East that are known autocratic states like, the Irans of this world. So there may not be any country today that is 100% practicing oligarchy, 100% practicing autocracy, except for a few, like I said, Iran. What you see is mumbo jumbo. They say that they are democracies, but then you see other forms of government in that as well. So it's really hard to separate. I don't know if somebody's able to help us about Haiti. I don't have the answer to that. I don't know what they practice. About Edo State, I'm also not very, very certain whether different families produce the kings or the traditional rulers as we have in some. I know that in some Western states, we see the rulership move from one family to the other. But from recent history, from what I know of Edo, it's a bloodline. From what I know of Edo, if anybody has information to the contrary, please help us. I don't know if I have tried in my way to answer your questions.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think in relation to Haiti, I'm thinking maybe they practice constitutional, but it's kind of because of the gangs. Yeah.
Right. In fact, which country was that? There's a country recently that people have been praising. It's in South America. People have been praising the leader. I've forgotten the name of the country. A young leader who almost eliminated gangs. Now, people are happy with the fact that the gangs have been eliminated, but they are also not happy with the suppression of the rights of dissenting voices. So sometimes you can see some good in or slightly leaning towards autocracy, but then what is the human rights condition under those kind of situation compared to military rule? Under military rule, people behave themselves in quotes. I remember war against indiscipline, right? I remember how people queued up on the roads for buses, how people cleaned the environment. Under a military regime, those were supposedly good things, right? But still under those same regime, there was a lot of killings, like extrajudicial killings. People were jailed, so good, bad. Look at Rwanda, for instance. Kagame is doing a great job. Yet, when it comes to human rights, he's not the best. the most popular government. But he has tried in other areas, other indices, education, healthcare. Rwanda is a beloved country in Africa right now. A lot of European people are going to Rwanda for holidays and going to invest there. Okay, so my argument has always been I believe countries, societies should find what works for them. I don't think there's a system that solves all problems. The reason democracy has survived this long is because maybe compared to the others, people believe it is still the best, but it is not without its flaws. Okay.
I
Thank
agree.
you very much.
And sorry, lastly, I think maybe it was El Salvador. And then I think
I think you're right. I think it's El Salvador.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think
yes.
also in relation to referendums, I think my presumption of the UK referendum was advisory compared to the one of the 1821. So I'm assuming that one was, it had to be enacted, whereby the UK one, I'm not sure if that had to be enacted. I don't know if it was, I think it was advisory. So I'm assuming the people also came into effect by kind of changing the law, as you were saying, kind of.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. I will hand it back over to our moderator to see if we have other questions and comments.
Okay, thank you, sir, for the wonderful class today. Yeah, my question, I have about two questions here. And the first one is about democracy. And my question about that is this: why does democracy fail in Africa? Or is it that democracy is not meant for Africa, or Africa needs to develop its own variant of democracy? That is number one. Number two, what can you say when there is a clash between citizenship and the indigenship or aboriginalism? Because there have been issues around some claiming that it is citizenship that should actually prevail. Some are saying no, it should be indigenship. I don't know what you actually have to say about that, sir.
Okay. Let me start from the second one. Indigenship,
and
citizenship. Yeah. For me, as a person, any system or any setting that guarantees that the rights of most of the people within that setting is protected, I'm all for it. If you have to discriminate against certain people, then I think it's unfair and unjust. So it really doesn't matter to me what we name it, whether it is citizenship, whether it is indigenship, as long as there are equal rights for the people there. No part is being exploited at the expense of the other. Not like you are taking resources from the original landowners and then you are using it to develop settlers. That would be unfair. The development should be uniform, right? As long as people are there legally. It's almost like what is happening in South Africa, right? They call it the Rainbow Nation. There are people from Zimbabwe, people from Congo, people from Ghana, people from different places that are there. However, the Black South Africans seem to be only focused on chasing their people that look like them out. Whether or not those people have legal rights, are paying taxes and contributing to the economy. For me, much more than any nomenclature, whether it is indigenship, like the Black South Africans are claiming, or citizenship, it must ensure that most people who are legally there have equal rights and access to welfare benefits, whether it's education, healthcare, justice, security. And even people who are there illegally, nothing gives you the right to round them up and beat them and burn them. Law enforcement exists for a reason. So they should respect the law and use, legal instruments. Let the law enforcement take care of people. I don't advocate for people being in places illegally. And if there are criminals, let them be prosecuted based on the law, not on mob justice. I think your first question had to do with
Why
democracy.
democracy fail in Africa?
Yeah. Again, I said that most countries practice democracy because the people, right? African countries had champions. Nigeria had the Awolowos, the Nnamdi Azikiwes, the Abubakar Tafawa Balewa championing the liberation from the British. Ghana had Kwame Nkrumah. Other countries had their champions, but these champions were representing people. And when they had their independence, they thought that this system that the Oyibo people had was a better system for them. In some places, maybe the Oyibo people made them do it. It doesn't matter. My argument, and this is a personal argument, don't take it as law, is that different societies should be able to modify their own form of governance. Again, the facts don't lie. The reason why democracy has survived more than most other forms of government is that most people everywhere think that it offers more benefits than the others. I do not think it's perfect. I think that societies can tailor their own governance structures to suit them as long as it guarantees the rights of the majority of the people within that social setting and benefits are spread almost evenly to all the people. For me, that's the only condition. Africa is not an exception. Asia is not an exception. I believe that everybody should find what works for them. And if democracy, as we practice it, is not working, then by all means, find a way, but it should be something the people do. That's why we have referendums. That's why we have petitions. We need to find vehicles to make sure that the form of governance that we are practicing is one that is supported by most of our people. And the conditions to have those conversations should always be created. We should not be afraid to have those conversations. Thank you, Olutunje. I hope that answers your
Thank you,
question.
sir. Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir, for the class. It was a very informative one. I really learned a lot. I don't know about others, but thank you very much for the class, sir. There are no more questions, so I would unmute everybody to give to tell and appreciate our facilitator for the class.
Thank you so much. Before you go on, Andrew, thank you. You said that the people, when I was trying to describe people with disability, you said it's PLWD. I think that means people living with disabilities. I hope you're correct. Thank you very much. Larry said the same thing. Thank you very much for that. I'm going through the comments now. Yes, so thank you for all the comments. I think I answered the question about somebody asked local governments today. If anybody has an answer, somebody already has an answer. 774. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think we've addressed the question. Peter had a question. I think that's the same question that I answered. Thank you, everyone. These conversations, are continuous conversations, and I'm sure our moderator will tell us about next steps. However, I share thoughts sometimes on different issues, and if you would like to follow me, my name is Tony Usidamen on all platforms, particularly LinkedIn. Please, if you want to follow me, you can follow me there. As always, it's a pleasure to take this class. Thank you very much to the Electoral College for having me. I wish everyone a lovely, lovely weekend.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Please, I've unmuted everybody. Please, let's appreciate our facilitator.
Thank you, sir. You did well. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. You're a
Thank
good
you
teacher.
very much for the class today.
Thank you,
very
sir.
much, sir.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you for the enlightenment.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, so we have come to
Thank you
the
so
end of
much, our
today.
facilitator. We are grateful.
Thank you so much for the very educative and interactive lecture. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Tony, thank you, sir. We are very grateful for what you have just told teach us here today. Thank you very much.
Please endeavor to come on time. Make sure